of them got arrested.
Oh, they did.
All right,
Oh, geez. Yeah.
We are now live.
Hello, I'm Matt Bergman, and you are listening to the Punk Rock Libertarians Podcast, episode 278. I'm here tonight with Jared Schneiderman.
Hey, everybody.
Alexis Schlegel.
What's going on, everybody?
Philip Dassing.
What's up?
And the great James Bovard. James is a columnist at USA Today. He's a former columnist at such places as like Reader's Digest, the Wall Street Journal, and Playboy. Thanks for coming with us. Thanks for being with us tonight, James.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Thanks for being interested in this killing.
Yeah, I invited you on specifically to talk about Duncan Lemp. And it's like, and the reason why I did is because like, I feel like just not enough is being said about this. This is just like, you know, drowning in the COVID right now. And this is some big shit. And like, from what I've read, like the reason why they went after this guy and shot him while he was sleeping, I mean, from what I've read, I mean, like the worst he did was like share some memes. So I'm thinking like, this could be me, you know, this could be Phil.
You share a lot of memes.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, man, I don't know, maybe you could just like tell our listeners about like what's happened here.
Okay, well, Duncan Lemp was 21 years old, living in his family's parents' house in Potomac, Maryland, a very affluent suburb of Montgomery County, Washington, D.C. area. He was volunteering. He was a very tech savvy, doing some work in software. He was volunteering a pro bono basis to set up secure websites for gun rights groups. Some of the, I guess, Boogaloo groups, things like that. He was also a fan of, apparently a fan of John McAfee, based on what he was liking on Twitter. So John McAfee, you know, a nice, quiet, moderate, reasonable guy. But I was looking at, you know, once the killing went down, I was looking at his Twitter page, and the last tweet that Duncan Lemp sent was 4 words: "The Constitution is dead." And
Right.
then I was doing a little more digging. I looked at his Facebook page, and I was surprised to see that he and I had 6 or 7 mutual friends. So you're thinking, oh shit.
Yeah.
So I did a little more digging, and what happened was the Montgomery County Police say that they got an anonymous tip 2 months earlier that he owned firearms. And according to the police, he was a prohibited owner based on a juvenile conviction. The family's lawyer says that's bullshit, and the cops have not said what it was. But so the police get a search warrant on March 11th afternoon, and the police get a no-knock warrant. And so what they do at 4:30 a.m. the next morning, the SWAT team attacks this peaceful house in Potomac, Maryland. This is a guy with no history of violence. He wasn't brandishing weapons. He wasn't threatening the neighbors. He wasn't robbing the 7-Eleven. But the cops go in there with flashbangs and gunfire. Apparently, it started with the first shooting through the bedroom window where the police knew that he slept. He was sleeping there next to his pregnant girlfriend, and he was apparently hit with the one of the first shots that went through.
Wow.
Jesus.
Shit.
So what is?
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
So this it appears to be a red flag. They were issued. It was like a red flag law.
I don't think so. No, I mean,
Okay.
there was another case in Maryland over close to Annapolis where the police went in with a red flag. I think I've forgotten how early, and the you know, they had heard some guy was troubled, so they went in there and gave the guy a bunch of trouble, and then they killed him. So it was a real red flag operation. I think this, from what the police have said, this was more of a, you know, simply he was a prohibited owner of firearms. But it doesn't make any sense for them to be doing a no-knock raid with that level of violence, with flashbangs, gunfire, at, you know, pre-dawn, never giving,
Right.
you know, so
I mean, what possible good outcome would come of that, where you have police coming to someone's door uninvited at 4:30 in the morning? What did they expect that to happen?
Well, you know, the thing that happened was the way what happened was that the police chose to execute the search warrant in a way that became a death warrant. and the cops had no death warrant. But if you're doing a no-knock raid at 4:30 in the morning, you aren't knocking and announcing. You aren't saying, this is Montgomery County Police, we've got a search warrant, we're going to search the house for firearms. No, you're shooting, and then you're setting off bombs. Flashbangs are bombs. I mean, if there was a case in Georgia where a guy had flashbangs and he was convicted of having a weapon of mass destruction. But if the cops have them, then they're forces for good. So
Right. And if you threw one at a cop, I bet you they wouldn't take it so kindly.
yeah, there was a funny story in this. There was a lawyer down in Georgia who was talking about this, and the lawyer had a client who was raided, and the cops used flashbangs. So what the lawyer wanted to do for the guy's trial, what he wanted to do was set off a flashbang in the courtroom. The judges didn't like that idea at all.
Yeah, so like I've heard that he was shot while he was sleeping.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. The family is saying that. The family is talking on this. The Montgomery County Police, it's almost 2 months since they killed the guy. They've said almost nothing. They put out 3 different statements, and the third one was almost comical because it was this twisted grammar that says, well, so the police went there and they went in the house and there was a rifle in the same room as Duncan Lemp, and the police gave him commands and he didn't obey, and that's all. It's kind of like, well, when did you shoot the guy? It wasn't mentioned. Did you shoot him before you gave him commands? Was he already on the floor bleeding at that point? Was he dying at that point? And this rifle you're talking about, did he have it? Did he point it? I don't think so. So the cops have been very, this is a cover-up. And unfortunately, with the state of Maryland, it makes it very easy for the cops to cover up their killings.
So question, do you think the pigs will ever provide the body cams?
It takes a long time to edit them.
Jeez.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the thing the lawyers are hollering for. This is the thing the families hollering for. There was a fatal shooting by the Montgomery County Police, same police department, on Thursday in the area of White Oak, Silver Spring. There was a guy, I guess, who was somewhat disturbed. He was outside with a big knife, and his neighbors felt threatened. And so the cop goes up there, and the cop's shouting, and put down the knife, put down the knife. And it was kind of, there was video of that, and the guy kind of backed away, then turned around and charged at the cop. And the cop, dropped him 4 or 5 shots. I don't know how many bullets he fired. Guy was dead. The Montgomery County Police put that video out on the next day.
Wow.
So they do have cam comms, and at the time that the SWAT team was there shouting and screaming at people in the house after they shot Lemp, after the cops came in and handcuffed everybody. They were on the floor, and the cops kept saying, this is being recorded. Okay, so where's the damn recording, guys?
Yeah, that's 2 months. Wow.
Yeah, so Jim, we're actually in Maryland too. We're in Baltimore County, and Jared's in Baltimore City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so and
sorry to hear that, guys.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, like you're actually like a guest that we could actually have in studio, because you're like really close to Anarchy Basement where we normally film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So and so be it. I have a friend who is in the Baltimore County police officers, and I was talking to him about the situation, and he was just like, look, he's like, when they do these raids, he said that the SWAT team, they don't have body cams on when they go in. So they bring in he said when they do it, they bring in a police officer who does, but he's in the rear. He only goes in after all the confrontation goes in.
All the murder has been committed.
Wow.
So is that something that you've heard or anything that might be why they're holding it up?
No, the Montgomery County Police have got to deal with the Howard County Police, and each of those counties takes jurisdiction to investigate police shootings in the other jurisdiction. So far, they haven't had any trouble with Howard County finding any trouble with the Montgomery County shootings. This is completely different than having an independent investigation, having someone going in there who's not part of the Maryland police network. But that hasn't happened. There's a huge problem as well, as you guys know, Maryland law enforcement Bill of Rights, the cops don't have to say anything for 5 to 10 days after they kill somebody. And it, you know, the way that works out, the cops often get to see the evidence the police have acquired on a case prior to them saying why they shot and killed somebody. So
they have lots of time to lawyer up.
Yeah, you know, lawyer up and make up the story. I mean, you know, there was a George Washington University Law Review piece last year that found that 98% of police chiefs who were surveyed said that type of law impedes investigation of police shootings. And some of the police chiefs were just very blunt, saying it simply gave cops a time to come up with a better lie for killing somebody.
Wow.
Wow.
This is
Now,
something
Jim,
this is something the Baltimore Sun has had some good articles on over the last 4 or 5 years. They haven't sustained it, and the ACLU, the Maryland ACLU, I think sent out one tweet on this case saying it's important to see the body cam. Well, ACLU, you're doing great work, you know. Anyhow, I'll spare you guys my thoughts on them.
Now, Jim, on your website, you have the chronicles of this case, and you've been going around. I just saw on the second you did a radio interview. So have you been getting this story out as much as possible?
Dude, I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple other things. There should be a piece out in the next few days by someone who interviewed me, left leaning, but this is a piece. This is a killing that's resonating intensely with gun rights groups, with the Boogaloo groups, that's another story, and some libertarians are paying attention to this as well. Yeah, I've had very good editors at the American Conservative on this. They've been gung-ho on this case. I've, talked to some other editors. We'll see what happens.
Excellent.
So has there been any suit followed yet by the family, or?
The family has not filed lawsuit as far as I know. I'm talking with their lawyers, but I'm not privy to a lot of their stuff. Part of, there's another variable here. Y'all might recall being near Baltimore. There was a federal court case last summer that slammed the city, because what the city does is, if there is a payment for someone who's a victim of police killing or beating or whatever, what the city of Baltimore does is attach a muzzle to it to say that the people lose half the settlement of money if they talk to the press.
Yeah.
And a federal judge basically tore Baltimore a new one on that. But the city, last I heard, the city's probably not obeying it. But I assume that this is something that they do under Maryland law. So I hope we find out what happened here. But I mean, Maryland is one of the worst states for covering up police abuses, and Montgomery County is probably the most anti-gun part of the state. And I think the local media's had almost zero interest in this. Maybe in part because the guy was a gun owner or gun rights advocate. I think there was some effort to portray him as like a gun extremist, but simply because someone owns firearms and speaks out in favor of the Second Amendment, I mean, I thought that was just being an American.
Well, yeah, it's like, what's the worst that can be said about this guy that you've heard?
What's the worst can be said about him?
Booby trap.
Yeah. Okay. So the third version that the police department put out here was stressing that he had a shotgun shell tied somehow rigged to his bedroom door to, in case someone came in. And I think the police department saw that as a partial vindication for the raid. I guess from my perspective, here's a dude who's maybe he's feeling paranoid, like people might be coming to kill him, and then someone comes and kills him and says, "Yeah, see, the dude was paranoid."
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know all the facts of the matter. It's interesting. I think there was probably at least one informant in this case, because the Montgomery police spent at least 2 months, well, may have spent 2 months investigating this. And I think they were told things by an informant that would help explain why the SWAT team went in there with so much violence and pre-dawn, because it was a simple case of a prohibited gun ownership. Somebody was a guy, I was talking to a guy from Pennsylvania on this, and he said, look, you look up in our rural area, there's a boatload of folks who own firearms and are prohibited for this or that reason. I mean, they aren't dangerous, they aren't threatening their neighbors, they aren't shooting people, but there's a lot of laws that prohibited people from owning guns, and a lot of people violate those. But it's unclear that Duncan Lemp was prohibited from owning guns. But but the police went in there. It's again going back to what the informant might have said. There's a search warrant. There were affidavits to get the search warrant, and the county police sealed those for 30 days. 30 days came up, and then they basically extended that. And then there was a ruling by Maryland Appeals Court that basically said, well, because of the pandemic, all the deadlines are off. So the government doesn't need to disclose. Well, hell, you might as well just suspend the state constitution, because if there's no way to compel the government to obey the law, then it's a facade. But this entire case has been a facade, because the police department never should have gone in there with violence. It never should have shot before knocking and announcing. It should not have used flashbangs early in the day, and it should tell people why it killed a Montgomery County resident. But I guess the police department feels they've got a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent about killing people.
So do we not know the nature of what this informant was, or how this informant came to be?
Not at this time, no. I mean, what can I say here? No, it's interesting. There's a long history in some of these hardline groups. I'm looking for value neutral terms here. Some of these groups are known, for having informants. I mean, it might be people that want to get paid. I mean, often there's folks who've got a conviction, which they are, as part of their plea bargain, they promise to bring in other scalps. This has happened to libertarians in the past. There was a group out in Arizona in 1986 that got busted. Informant brought them down. This is the kind of thing that the feds have done massively to Muslims after 9/11. There was all kinds of informants who basically enticed people to commit crimes. But that was, what's happened in the last 30 or 40 years is federal judges have basically defined entrapment out of existence. So it doesn't matter what the informant or the police do. It's not entrapment because the person was predisposed to do the crime. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. But this is a parody.
Ruby Ridge would be a great example.
Absolutely.
I mean,
That's.
I mean that.
Yeah,
That was basically entrapment. I mean, they basically convinced him, "Hey, saw these shotguns off, and we'll pay you." And they were undercover agents.
Herb Byerly, I think, was the name of the ATF agent who was undercover there, and that was why the federal jury in Idaho would not convict Weaver for the firearms violation, which basically blew the federal court case. I mean, I think the jury had a bad attitude because of all the FBI lies about killing Vicki Weaver, which came out. But it's interesting that I wrote a lot about that. I did a piece for the Wall Street Journal that FBI Director Louis Freeh directly attacked. He attacked me by name a couple times. That hurt me deeply. But there was a key issue in that about whether the FBI had a right to go in there and start shooting at the cabin in Randy Weaver. And there was a confidential Justice Department report that said that, in fact, the FBI snipers opened fire on Weaver and the Weaver family prior to giving any warning, violated the Constitution. And we might have the same issue here with the Duncan Lemp case, because it looks like that the police, from what the family has said, the police opened fire before knocking, announcing, or warning. Maybe the police have got evidence to the contrary. If so, we should see it.
Right. It definitely sounds like they're trying to hide something. And I don't.
No,
I
you
mean,
think? Yeah.
like,
Hey, it's only been 2 months.
Yeah, it's just, it's so clear, and the fact that there's no media, besides you that's really talking about it, it's as clear as day. I mean, I don't know how else, what kind of spin or what people even think about, if they're even thinking about it at all, which I don't think they are. I think the media silence is doing its part.
I saw
Yeah.
Michael Malice did an interview on Glenn Beck about this case, which was pretty encouraging. And I stumbled across that on Facebook. There was a, yeah, it was a pretty good interview. Definitely getting it out there to a wider audience. So
Yeah, and
that was encouraging.
Yeah, this is something I think there's going to be more coverage of this once we learn more about the case. I mean, it's a challenging situation because you've got you've got the killing, and then you've got the family lawyers and the family, and they're very credible. But it would help immensely if we could see some of the documents. I mean, see the memos, see the emails, why they decide to go in there and launch a deadly attack pre-dawn, because obviously it had tragic results. You got someone dead who didn't need to be dead. You had his girlfriend injured. You had the family terrorized.
Who was pregnant.
Yeah, who was pregnant. So I think more details are going to come out of this, but it's frustrating that there's not more outrage about the cover-up. So, and I appreciate you guys having me on to talk about this, because I don't have a magic wand that I can wave over police files.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, do you think,
like,
I was gonna say,
like,
go
Jim, I
ahead.
was gonna say, do you think it's possible that we'll never get a video?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. What the fuck?
I mean, this is Maryland. I mean, as I was telling somebody, it was shocking to see this happen in Montgomery County, especially in a place like Potomac. If something like this happened in Baltimore, it'd be like, well, it was a Thursday.
Right. Yeah.
This is the kind of common shit they do there. But
Like, what do you think is the best way to get some video? Like, I mean, like, should we start calling the police precinct like every day, or the Montgomery County Police? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, lawyers are nudging on this. There have been quite a few Freedom of Information Act requests who've all been stymied, as far as I know. Hopefully there'll be some. Well, I don't know. I don't have a good answer on that. I mean, I've used my elbows, and my elbows came up empty. So far, I'm still elbowing.
Jim, you said there was a recent protest down there within what you said the past 3 weeks ago, there was a protest outside the police station in Montgomery County.
Right. Let me see if I can turn that off.
No worries.
No problem.
Screw it, didn't work. There were some gun rights groups that protested outside police headquarters here in Montgomery. I think on April 25th or so, and about. It was great that people were concerned about the killing and wanted to protest. I hope that there's other protests and maybe a little more. I hope there are other protests. Some of at least one of the organizers had encouraged people to bring guns to the protest. Bringing guns to protests in Maryland is not legal, and so you had about 10% of the attendees got arrested.
Wouldn't be prudent. Yeah, unfortunately, we live in the worst state when it comes to gun rights.
It feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite as bad as New Jersey, but almost no place is.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic when you live in a May issue state where the governor, King Hogan, can grant, basically decides who can and who cannot carry.
Well, and it's frustrating that Hogan, there's a lot of reasons to criticize him these days, but
yeah, he's the worst. He is by far the worst.
Well, I think that the prior dude was worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that Hogan's done lately that I strongly disapprove. But Hogan did veto the bill on banning long gun transfers, private long gun transfers. So I
Yeah,
give him
he
credit
did
on
do
that.
that.
But he also signed in the red flag laws.
Boom.
I think he's been supporting all these sort of assault weapons bans that they've been trying to drum up. So he's definitely
Well,
not
you
a
know,
Second Amendment hero.
yeah, is he going to run for president in 2024, or what's your
I-
impression?
I think it looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is bad news for Maryland, because he's going to be so. If that's the case, he's going to be even more concerned what the Washington Post says about him. So it's like,
Right.
and that's like, oh, that's, you know, you talk about a bad incentive system, you know, caring about the Washington Post coverage. I mean, anyhow,
So I'm just curious, why do you choose to live in Maryland?
it was part of the terms of my parole. No, it was it goes back some years. My I'm no longer married, but my ex was a foreign dental graduate from Germany, and at the time that she and I got married, I was raised in Virginia. I think of myself as a native Virginian. Wasn't born there, but the state of Virginia is kind of going to hell as well.
Yeah.
The last
Yeah.
15 years, so it's not like it's it's not like, oh, well, it's going to Virginia. But at the time she and I got hitched, the state of Virginia did not recognize any foreign dental graduates. So she would have had to do it her entire time of dental school again, whereas Maryland simply required 1 year of graduate education. So that's the only reason I'm in Maryland. And, I'm not, not a fan of Maryland, not a fan of the government here. Eh.
Gotta do what you gotta do. Are there any other sort of cases out there, recent cases that are similar to this at all that we're just not hearing about?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating how the media spotlight works. There's been a great deal of attention about the killing of the black guy in Georgia by the two white guys who it sounded like it was a murder. I mean, we don't have all the details, but it's kind of, and it should have been.
Did you see the video of that?
No, I haven't. What's your? I haven't seen that. What's your take on that?
Oh, because I've been studying it a bunch, right?
Okay.
And then watching the video, I guess it's like maybe like a 30-second long video or something.
Okay.
And somebody's driving in a car behind the gentleman's name is or was Ahmaud Arbery.
Okay.
And he's running along the street, right?
Okay.
And up ahead of them, there's a pickup truck where the father and the son, the father is in the bed of the truck, and I think he has like a 357 pistol.
Okay.
And the son is around on the driver's side on the front with a shotgun, right?
Okay.
So the black guy, he runs past the truck, and then he starts wrestling with the son who has the shotgun.
Okay.
And then when they're fighting over the shotgun, then the shotgun goes off twice.
Okay.
So it's
yeah.
So
why were
that's
they?
what you see out of the video,
Right. But the question is, why were they following him with a shotgun and a pistol?
I think he was just like out for a jog, and they thought he was like a suspect, or they.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that part's overblown. I think that might have been the original take. Like it's clear to me they murdered this guy. They chased him down. They found him because they thought that there were some break-ins in the neighborhood, and there's a video of this guy walking through a house that's under construction, and I guess maybe prowler, like he's some type of prowler. I don't know. I don't know to that extent. But so everyone's saying, well, he was just jogging. I don't know if he was just jogging. I mean, there was reports that he was 16 miles away from his house. But that still doesn't justify murder. You know what I mean?
I think it was actually 10 miles away from his house, right? So 10 miles away from your house, right? If you're running 10 miles away from your house and running back home, you're basically running a fucking marathon. And the weird thing about this in the video, it looks like he's wearing cargo shorts and shoes that are not running shoes.
He was wearing Timberlands, I think.
So if he's this,
and he had apparently he had a hammer on him.
Yeah, if he's this into jogging, who is going to jog with cargo shorts and Timberlands? So
Yeah.
I mean, and these are all just like facts of the matter, right? And then like I've seen in some places where these guys are being called white supremacists, and it's like, why?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's just always it always seems like
Yeah, it's identity politics.
the most fishiest like whether it be cops and civilians, whenever there's these cases, it seems like the media just runs with the most ambiguous cases where there's
Yeah.
not that much information.
This is what
But then
I've always
the
said.
most slam dunk, like why is Duncan Lemp story not pumped up steadily in
Right.
the mainstream media, where it's clearly
Because they need to have the ambiguity so that you can fill 24 hours of news with people
Right.
arguing over, oh, this was, defense of property, or this was murder, or this was a racial killing, or this was a random killing, or whatever. It's just they did the same thing with what was the one in Ferguson? What was that guy's name?
Daryl Wilson was the cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Michael Brown. I
Michael
think.
Brown, the Michael Brown
yeah.
case, or the
Yeah,
the
it was
case
like-
in Florida, the
Trayvon Martin.
Trayvon Martin, yeah.
case, and yet ones that are pretty slam dunk, like the Eric Garner case, where he's literally choked out on camera for selling a Lucy, barely gets any media attention or outrage.
which was strange because the Eric Garner case was the most outrageous.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the shooting in Ferguson, it might have been unnecessary, but the Justice Department under, Eric Holder said, well, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was justified. I forgot the exact term the Justice Department used, the civil rights investigation, but to see how the media went with that. But aside from that, I mean, you got a Duncan Lemp case here, 21 years old, apparently shot in his bed. I mean, it's clear, as I understand, the bedroom window was shot out. The bedroom window was facing the street, and it wasn't like he was shooting at the police. So what the hell are you doing shooting into a bedroom at 4:30 in the morning?
Yeah, like couldn't they just wait for him to leave and then like take his guns from his parents?
Sure.
I mean,
that's a parallel with Waco. I mean, you had the ATF who claimed that the Branch Davidians ambushed them. We had to wait 6 years for
Branch Davidians ambushed them. Right.
No, but
From inside their compound.
Yeah.
We had to wait 6 years for a FOIA request, which turned up the memo that ATF agents went shooting with David Koresh about 8 or 10 days before that raid.
Wow.
Undercover ATF agents who David Koresh knew were ATF, the 3 or 4 of them went out shooting. And it's like, but we had no chance to arrest him. That was complete bullshit. The media ran with it. And if folks had known the truth on the day of the ATF raid, when the 6 Davidians, I think, and 4 ATF agents were killed, if they had known that the ATF guys had gone out shooting with Koresh 8-10 days earlier, ATF would have had no credibility. ATF covered that up, and this is, there's an old saying that don't worry, the truth will out. Yeah, well, that's bullshit. As an investigative journalist, I see how rarely that happens.
Hey, James, I'm just curious. Have you seen the Waco documentary that's up on Netflix right now?
No, I haven't seen it. I've heard very good things about it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm a couple episodes in, and I'm thinking it's pretty cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out too. There's so many, like, I would say, parallels to what's going on right now. But I mean, have you I did have a question. Have you been by his house, or have you seen pictures of his house at all, Duncan Lemp?
Yeah, I've seen pictures. I've not been by the house.
So the window was shot out?
That's my understanding. I think there were pictures of that. One of the nice things about that protest is I had a chance to meet his mother and talk to her at length. Also met his father, his aunt, talked to them. And, it's good to get the family perspective and to get some very good background details on what happened. So, because Montgomery County Police, I mean, it's like a damn sphinx. So not that I'm bitter.
Damn.
Yeah, because I know this. I mean, like, yeah, it's just strange. It's like, isn't there something where like Maryland just doesn't even record how many SWAT raids they have anymore because it was so
Ah.
embarrassingly high?
Yeah, there was a raid in Berwyn Heights, College Park,
Mhm.
2008 or 9. The mayor was, somebody sent a box of marijuana and used the mayor's address. So PG, Prince George's County SWAT team comes in, kills the guy's dogs, terrorizes the family. There was a brief outrage, and the state legislature voted to mandate that they had to track the number of SWAT raids. And so they did that for about 4 years, and the numbers were so embarrassing that they stopped counting.
Wow.
Because someone made up a great point in the chat. They're like, if they do a no-knock raid over a gun charge, what were they afraid of? He was going to flush his guns?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Going back, this goes back 25 years, but I was writing about some no-knock raids for Playboy, and there was a Supreme Court case, and it was Wilson versus Arkansas, and it was a no-knock raid that the police went in because a woman had done some drug dealing, and she was suspected of having drugs, and the cops were concerned she might flush them, and so they just barged right in, and they were arguing this back and forth there in the oral arguments at the Supreme Court, and the lawyer for the lawyer for the Justice Department said that it made sense to not have the knock announced for small amounts of drugs, but if there was a large amount of drugs, then it's justified. And that was the criminal defense lawyer played off that and said, well, okay, so the amount of rights you have depends on how much drugs you have. If you got more drugs, you got more rights. I thought that was funny. I burst out laughing. I was the only person who laughed in the court, so I got thrown out of the court by the bailiff. And I had a big hearty laugh, and everybody turns and look, who's that asshole? And next thing I know, I tap on the shoulder of my bailiff, you out. So anyhow.
That's awesome.
It's so ridiculous. It's like the scene in Goodfellas when Karen was trying to flush all the coke and down the toilet, and yeah, like you said, Jim, the amount of no-knock raids in Maryland are just staggering. And I think I told Matt and Jared and Phil about this, like, I don't know, maybe years ago. But I witnessed a no-knock raid of my neighbor's house a couple doors down. I live in a row home in East Baltimore County.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just sitting out on my front porch drinking a beer. And there's kids literally playing out on the sidewalk, riding their bikes and just playing
Sure.
out in the front yard. And all of a sudden I see out of the corner of my eye, because I'm out on the front porch and it's maybe about 10 doors down. These are all row homes, townhomes. Sure. And I see literally a shield, like five cops in full riot, the riot gear, tactical gear, and then 2 plain dress cops. And I knew something was going down because I saw like a cop parked down the street and another cop car. And then I go out in my back deck and I see, and they said Baltimore County Police, and they just busted in the screen door and went right in the door. Now, the guy that lived there, he apparently, I don't know, I think he had his kids there sometimes, little, like they were maybe less than like, I don't know, 6 and maybe 4 years old. And I don't know, kind of a shady character, but I guess he was selling drugs. But my whole thing was like, really, was it necessary? Guns drawn with kids playing out in the front lawn, busting in the door and then not only that, but it's like dum-dums. You live in a fucking row home. Like there's only 2 ways out, front door, back door. Like, you know what I mean? Like really, like this was necessary. And there was a cop and cops posted up in the alleyway, but like really, like the whole concept, the whole reason for no-knock raids is like, oh my God, they might flush the evidence. But in most cases, it makes no fucking sense, because if you have enough evidence to initiate a raid with a warrant, you should have sufficient evidence besides the actual drugs itself.
Right.
Just like they did, it's just so insane that the level of violence that's brought to your front doors, and then just the bystanders that are, could
Well, you shouldn't be getting arrested for possessing anything anyways. So the whole thing doesn't make any sense. So it leads you to these crazy, absurd situations where you have to break into someone's house to like preserve the evidence. It's like,
Right.
what?
It makes
Like,
no fucking sense.
Yeah, and a part of my concern, writing about this off and on for 25 years, there's a level of violence with the SWAT raid that's basically a declaration of war. And that's, you have a lot of people getting killed in these raids, a lot of innocent people getting killed. You get cops get injured as well. And, going back 400 yeyears, there was a case in England that there's, I think, I've forgotten the title, but the sheriff's case or something like that, that established that the sheriff has to knock and announce as when he's serving a search warrant. Well, back in the 1980s, they started to make exemptions on this. And now you got 50,000 SWAT raids a year, most of them no knock, as I understand, and a shitload of violence. And even when they don't shoot people, I mean, this is an act of terrorism. I mean,
Yeah.
if somebody did that to police headquarters, oh my goodness, the media would be so upset.
And this is also part of the militarization of police in this post 9/11 world, where you have the military industrial complex just basically backing some of these police departments. And they just, when they sit around, they have all these toys of up armored Humvees and all this surplus military industrial complex from all our, adventures over in the Middle East. It's like, it's just insane the amount of they're just sitting around bored. They're just ready to use all these toys.
That's exactly what it seems to me. Like, that's my
Did you guys
hypothesis
see
of this whole thing.
Did you guys see the picture of those two like fat ass pigs in front of the MRAP?
Yeah, like it was whatever county they had a GoFundMe to
Texas,
get
I think.
get those the county sheriffs a treadmill or something.
As far as the military equipment, until recently, there was a provision that if a police department got all that military equipment, they had to use it within 1 year, or else they would forfeit it. So there was, so the feds put in an incentive not only to give them military equipment, but for them to have to use it. So it's
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, it's just perverse incentives.
Yeah, and something that was funny is, there was more and more press coverage on this towards the end of the Obama administration. In 2015, 2016, President Obama says, yeah, I'm really upset by this. We've really got to change. Dude, for 7 years, you were bankrolling this. You were financing it. You were getting all the weaponry. So,
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it really sounds like that to me. Like that's the only thing I can think of is why they do these things, is because they feel like they have to and they can. Like, they're just like, we got to use it. Let's use it. We got it. Let's use it.
well,
And
yeah.
then they can spin it.
Well,
Sure.
yes, because the media tends to doesn't investigate it. I mean, the media is so deferential in most cases, and this is a gun case. Some of the coverage was stressing that he had been out with some of these militia groups, some of these boogaloo groups. I mean, I can understand why some people get nervous about the boogaloo groups.
I don't know. Every time I hear the Boogaloo group, I assume this is like got to be a joke.
Well, yeah, well,
Or the big luau.
I think it's like 75% a joke, and then there's probably 25% of people that actually want some kind of armed revolution.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I can believe people hate the government. I sure as fuck do.
Yeah, we all do.
I mean, it's just the name, the Boogaloo. I feel like
Boogaloo.
Yeah, it's strange, and as I said earlier, I think there was an informant. I think it's very likely there was an informant in this case. I don't know where the informant met Lemp or what information he had, but somebody was feeding the police information that frightened the police, and so the police went way overboard. I've also wondered if the feds might have been involved, but I've not seen any confirmation on that, because Lemp was outspoken online on this, and he was helping some of these hardline groups. So I don't know, but to see how the FBI roped in Muslims after 9/11, that's always a parallel that I'm concerned about here.
Yeah, like I remember in I don't know if you probably remember this, Jim. It was actually in Catonsville where I live. There was like some kid who was like he was like a young teenager, and he was like convinced by the FBI to go in this car and detonate a bomb in in some sort of like recruitment parking center.
Okay, yeah, that's and it was a fake bomb, and
Exactly. Yeah.
300 years or whatever.
Yeah. It was just manufactured terror,
Yep.
Meanwhile, this kid's like a fucking joke, he's just like, manipulated by these guys. Like, I mean, this kid would not have probably, definitely, there's no reason to believe that this kid would have done anything like this had he not met the FBI.
Yeah, well, it wasn't him meeting the FBI; it was the FBI meeting him,
Right.
or an FBI informant. I mean, there've been on these gun sting cases. There are cases of the ATF setting up gun sting operations and intentionally signing up people who were mentally handicapped. People who had an IQ of 70. And I think it was out in St. Louis where they persuaded some of those guys to get tattoos. Tattoos for their gun sting. It's complete outrage. And once again, it goes back to the feds can do anything and the courts don't label it entrapment. Very frustrating.
I mean, just like recently, just those cases in Baltimore, that the gun trace task force in Baltimore.
Oh,
City.
yeah, they're a hoot.
Yeah, and they literally, in their findings, they literally had BB guns on them to plant as evidence to, justify them shooting first.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's interesting. People complain about people not trusting the police, but I'm thinking that gun trace task force. I mean, one of my favorite details from them was that those guys would put GPS trackers onto people's vehicles so they knew when they weren't home, and then go and burglarize their house.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I remember that. Yeah, Jesus, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Baltimore has had an endless series of scandals. You all might recall, this is probably 6 or 7 years old, 6 or 7 years ago, but there was, there was an auto shop, an auto repair shop, I think over on the east side. And anytime there was an auto accident, the police would come in and say, okay, the car has got to be taken there. And you had like at least 30, 40, 50 cops were getting kickbacks from this auto repair place. And it was a complete scam, and God knows how many years it went on. So
wow.
Yeah, it just reminded me what you guys were talking about before. This is like the classic meme. It says FBI foils FBI terror plot.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so awful.
It's interesting that these terror plots, these entrapment schemes get exposed time and again. And what happens the next time the FBI or some government agency says, oh, we had a plot, we had this, we had media, stampedes, like a bunch of lemmings going over a cliff.
Right.
Yeah. So, hey, I think we're just about out of time here for the podcast. But like Jim, if you want to stick around and hang out, we do an after hours program, which you're invited to.
Okay.
Yeah. So, also we have t-shirts up at libertariancountry.com. If you type in the code PRL or the code PRL podcast, you'll receive a 10% discount. If you spend $50 or more and you type in the code PRL2, you'll receive a 20% discount. This podcast is brought to you in part by Conversations About Freedom podcast, hosted by Moral Bob. Until
also,
next
Jim,
time.
Also, Jim, do you have anything you want to plug? Maybe your website, or where we could get the latest on the Duncan Lemp case. Do you have a current website you can let our listeners?
My current website is jimbovard.com. Last name is Bovard. It's French. Don't hold against me. I've also got a blog there where I post articles and interviews and sometimes photographs. Bovard and Lemp is one way to find the articles. I think there's going to be some other folks are looking into this, but the Montgomery County Police Stonewall has thus far succeeded. So, but thanks very much for your interest. Thanks for your having the fire in the belly on this issue because
No,
it's been damn scarce. So I
No, we
appreciate
wanted to
that,
get
Pat.
you on here because it's lost in the sauce amongst all this COVID, and we didn't want Duncan Lemp. We wanted to get this back out there and make sure that this doesn't go away. And thank you for what you do.
Well, thanks very much.
Yeah. Well, until next time, live free.
Or die.